Welcome, everybody, to the Nerdthusiast Movie Podcast, the inaugural episode. Here with me is my friend Dane from long ago. Dane, how are you today?
I'm doing great. What's going on, Matt?
Not much, man. Happy to get into this. Just so you guys know, too, this is a sponsored piece of content. We were sponsored to review this movie. Dane's a little bit of an expert that has some background with movies and stuff like that. That's why I wanted to bring him on. Hopefully he'll do more of this stuff with us in the future. He's a busy man, so we'll see how his schedule goes. Dane, why did I choose you? You tell me.
Well, I was actually trying to think of it earlier today. You and I have known each other for like 15 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been a long time, dude. We were in college. We were 21, 22 years old.
Holy
That's
crap.
how old we are now.
I had hair back then. I had a mohawk back then.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. One of us kept their hair in there.
Kiss my ass.
But you and I have a bit of history with independent filmmaking. I went to film school, and my degree at Stockton, which you also attended, is in communications and a couple other things. So you, me, and a bunch of our buddies, we ended up making about 90-minute independent movie and stuff like that. You kind of know how tough it is to do that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just with all the scheduling and with, trying to do everything on the cheap, which is obviously what this movie did, which is okay. We'll pick it apart as we go. But you and I have a bit of history of basically doing exactly what the people that made this movie did, which was trying to just shoot something around what we had and what we can do and make it as good as we could.
Definitely. I mean, you're very limited by, the resources you have, who you know, and who you can get to do what you can within, specific time frames.
Sure. And it's people too. It's all scheduling people, because when you don't pay people, they all show up the first day, and then you can't get them to show back up the next day.
That messes up all sorts of stuff, I'm sure.
Yes, it does. Scheduling, always scheduling. The movie that you sent me, let me see here. I don't want to get any names wrong. I don't want to fuck anything up. That's our first F-bomb.
The title was Human Hibachi.
Human Hibachi, which as soon as I saw that, I said, I don't think directed by Mario.
Full disclosure too, guys. Ida Hoagie is in this movie, so you might recognize him. He has a short cameo in the movie.
Yes, he is.
So
he works at the diner, right?
The sushi restaurant,
right? No, it's the diner. He walks up and gives her the check.
Oh, right? Shit, it is the diner. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you're right.
In the very beginning, did you watch the movie? Pay attention? Did you take notes? Right. But he's in the movie, and it's directed by Mario Cerrito.
The third.
Mario Cerrito, the third. But you got to get that in there. All of the auteurs, we use our initials, or all that shit. What did you think of the movie? We'll just go with that. I'm going to put you on the spot and say and ask what you thought of the movie.
For an independent movie, I thought it was decent. I have some gripes for sure.
Sure.
I understand some of the gripes that I have. I get why they were that way. Overall, I thought the actors were pretty good, especially the guy Ryu. Is that how you pronounced it? It's like R-E-U?
Yeah. Yeah. Rio. Yeah.
He was super creepy in the beginning, and I thought that was excellent. Like, that was my favorite part of the movie. Like, was him being just a fucking creeper. It was great.
Well, my favorite person in the movie, I actually had two. The guy that was the butcher was definitely chewing it up, and he had a lot of fun doing it, I could tell.
For sure.
That's fun. But the boss, the tall guy that was sitting in the middle, and he ate the
with the white hair.
Did he have white hair? Well, no, but he was the guy that he was reading the sales amounts.
Yeah, that was him.
And stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just. Okay. So all right. Here, let me grab my notes, okay? Because I did take notes. Okay.
For sure, I took some notes as well.
All right. So the movie, Human Hibachi, it's set up as a frame, like a frame story. Do you know what that means?
Um, there's going to be like a twist, basically. That right? Is that what we're talking
No,
about?
that's not what it means.
No.
So no, so a frame is, you know how in the very beginning it's the cop is sitting there with a mother, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they go to watch it, and then
Yes.
it comes back to them. It's sort of like when, you know, the old man sits in the rocking chair and he says, "I'm gonna tell you a story about how
Okay.
when I
I
was
got
young,"
you.
and then the movie tells, and then they come back to him at the end. And he says, "That's when I met your mother," or whatever, however that movie ended, the show
Yeah.
ended. But that's what a frame narrative is. Um,
See, this is
so
why I
when
got
I
you on. I had no idea what I would have never
yeah,
known what the hell
that's
that was.
that's what that's called. The movie is also shot in what some people call found footage, kind of, but it's actually technically, I think it's called cinema verite. So that's my film school coming out.
I don't know
But
what that means, but I know what found footage is. So I
yeah,
get you. I get you
it's
there.
basically, yeah. I mean, it's basically found footage, which is kind of the idea. I think the idea of it was somebody was running around with a camera, get to that, and was creating something that was going to be sent to Japan for Japanese guys to whack off to. That's what it was,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Right? Because
I
what else are you
mean,
going to do? You buy, I don't know. You're going to spend a lot of money for like a snuff porn. What are you not going to do?
yeah. I would imagine that's what it was for in the black market.
Sure. Um, but which I thought was fine, and then the little bit of the twist at the end where you know he turns out to be one of the people, which is when he shows up, spoiler, at the end of the movie, and he's, in the footage. I'm sitting there thinking he's showing this woman the video, and he pops in and he turns out he's a bad guy, but
Right.
how they ended it that way I thought was neat. But
Yeah, the
so
extra twist at the end, I wasn't ready for. Like
yeah,
that was
yeah,
that was
that was
good.
cool. I liked it. But the oh, wait a minute, my notes though. Right in the very beginning though. Okay. Classic, and also too, I think part of the movie, it was trying to get a little bit meta with itself. You know what I mean? It was trying to do some classic horror movie stuff, specifically uh, keep no audience waiting for tatters, because they showed up early in the movie. Okay,
Yeah, they
they
did.
showed up early. They showed up early, and you don't waste like more than 5 minutes, okay? Because if there ain't titties in the first couple of minutes of a horror movie, you're.
I mean, you're on the
But
right path
anyway,
at that point. That's what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
now before we get to the hibachi place, though, there were a couple things that bugged me. Mainly and look, I'm not the best at writing dialogue, but some of the dialogue in the movie, especially the beginning stuff, and I know it's tough writing couples banter. You know what I mean? Where, he says something where, she offers him cake, and then he says, I hate cake. Who the fuck hates cake? Okay. Or he says something, or, they're going to a train and she says, I hate trains. I'm like, well, I don't know. Some of that was a little bit tough, you know what I mean? Because it kind of takes you out of it a little bit. But you have to fill it up. Um, so I don't know. What did you think about some of that kind of stuff? This is basically all filler before you get to the hibachi place.
Right. I like most of the actors in the movies. I can't think of anybody that was like. I wouldn't say that anybody was bad, but the writing definitely needed a shot in the arm for sure. Um, there were spots where like there was one spot in particular that didn't make any goddamn sense, and they kind of. I feel like they filmed this part. It was when they were in the restaurant, and they uh, Rio. I keep wanting to say Rio. It's Rio, right? Rio.
I think it's Rio. Yeah.
He started fighting with Brian, but that fight escalated like extremely quickly, and I was like, "Wait, what the?" I was like, "What the fuck?" And the explanation was that he was taking steroids, and I was like, "Well, I guess I guess that's an explanation, but I feel like they filmed that and were like, this doesn't work. What are we gonna do?" And it's like, "Oh, just say he was on steroids." Like almost like
Well,
they filled it in later on. You know what I mean?
it's also really tough to seem surprised in a movie as an actor. It's tough to seem surprised, and
I'm not an
it's
actor,
tough to
so I
get in an argument. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
like in the movie, someone like, brings drinks and like, oh my gosh, drinks. I'm gonna get so wasted. You know what I mean? It's tough to seem surprised. But then also when they're kind of arguing and stuff like that, it's tough to have an argument because, um, you know, like you said, it escalates so quickly because a real argument takes 10 minutes of grinding your teeth and being upset at somebody in order to really explode. You know what I mean? And you can't sit there, even though some of the shots in this movie were a little long.
Yeah. I
You know what I mean?
I just think that like if they, if what I said was true, which I have no idea if it was true or not, if they noticed that there was a problem with it, like why not spend some time rewriting that scene and like fixing it? Because that was like just like to me it was like one of the biggest problems I had with the movie was that scene. It was like, God damn, dude, you went from 0 to 60 and then your explanation was steroids. Like, okay, I mean, like maybe that's like a legit explanation, but like just fix it. You know what I mean? Like that's a problem with me.
Right. Well, I think part of they can't fix it because there's nothing to cut around because of the way
Mm,
that the movie's shot. You know what I mean? There's no coverage. It's what's called coverage. So like whenever you shoot a movie, if you want to have two people having a conversation or four people, you'd put like say the camera at the end of a table and then you'd shoot a
okay.
master. You would shoot a master with everyone in it, right? And then you get everyone's dialogue in it. And then you do what's called breaking into coverage. So then you turn the camera to the one
Somebody goes a
girl, and then
line or
she would say
something.
her lines, and then she would do all of her lines, and then all of her reaction. Then you'd go boom, and then you'd go boom, and then you'd go boom. And that's why it takes so long to do this stuff. But obviously, they shot it all very quickly that you can't have coverage. You know what I mean? And I think that's the excuse for shooting it all on the phone and uh,
That's what I was going to ask you because
as
I,
if
I
it's
thought that was
happening right
true. Like
away.
they did shoot the whole movie on a phone. Is that
Definitely
right?
all shot on a phone. And I'm going to tell
Okay.
you why it's definitely shot on a phone because at 42 minutes and 22 seconds, there's a finger in front of the lens, um, which blew my mind.
Oh
I had to write
man,
down the
I
timestamp,
think
but
I saw
also,
that too.
right, but also too, you can just tell too. You know what I mean? Like,
But I think that's kind of what they were going for. Like, oh, we're gonna, it's gonna be like shot on a phone. Like this was like an amateur recording thing. Like I think that's kind of what they were going for.
yeah, I would believe that if they called it a phone. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like a couple things. First of all,
Interesting.
and here's why. If you're holding a camera, and I mentioned this to you, if you're holding a camera in front of somebody
Right.
and ask you, well, why are you recording? Why do you have a camera? Why do you have a camera? And they kept calling it a camera. Or you're going to hold a phone and you say, why, you know what I mean? I think that it wasn't necessarily, I don't think in the context of the story, it was meant to be a phone, even though it
Okay.
obviously was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you saw the
You can
guy
see the
from
shadow of like,
you can see the shadow of it too, and then you could also see the thing. But the movie, you see phone footage in movies. They're not shot on phones. You know what I mean? It just looks, you know what I mean? It's meant to be. And I think the movie would have been infinitely better had they gone in that direction, not necessarily shot it on the phone because you can make phone footage look really good. And this looked like it was shot with a phone. You know what I mean?
I'm
So,
not like the biggest like video file, but I care a lot about audio, and the
mm,
audio, I felt like the audio was shot through the phone too, which I mean, I maybe it wasn't, but
it
I
was.
understand it was an independent film. I totally get that, but audio matters a lot to me. And man, there was points where I was like jacking up the volume just to like, what did he say? What did he say? And like,
Mhm.
I as a viewer shouldn't have to go through that, in my opinion, even if it's an independent film. That's something that needs to be addressed.
I watched it on my TV, and I had to do that a little bit. But then I also heard when certain people were talking because if the phone's not pointed directly at them, it's a unidirectional mic as much as it can be. So if the person to the left of the frame or the right of the frame is talking and you can't hear them, they had to pump up the gain, and you know what that sounds like. You get that
Yeah.
hissing sound, and it sounds terrible. And unfortunately, when you're shooting so fast, like I know that they did, you can't worry about audio, but that make or breaks the difference between an independent movie, so to speak, and an amateur movie.
Yeah, and
You
I
know what I
totally
mean?
get that. It was on a budget and everything, but it does break the immersion. It's very hard. It's hard for me to get past audio complications as much as it is,
Right.
video ones. I
And I
feel like I
mean,
can give it over more.
well, and I agree with you, considering that like $100 microphone and $100 DAT recorder and a $50 boom pole, like makes it infinitely better. You know what I mean? And
For
one
sure.
person to hold the boom pole. Do you know what I'm saying? But you have to go fast, and that's the excuse. But that's just, I think that the movie suffered big time because of that. I think that that's probably the biggest gripe that I had with the movie. And also, there were just parts that just kind of just kept going. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, um, you can only watch the guy cook hibachi for so long until like we watched him cook all the hibachi.
Well, I
You know
think
what I
that's
mean?
really what they were going for with the horror element, which didn't, I didn't feel at any time like scared or terrified during the movie. I felt like uneasy a little bit, but I never felt like freaked out. Like, I've watched all sorts of horror movies. I watched, Japanese horror movies, which are fucked, like really, really messed up.
Mhm.
And this wasn't to that level. It was uneasiness, but it wasn't like I never felt uncomfortable or like I never felt afraid. Like when you watch, like, I know it's on a whole different level, but when you watch, like, Michael Myers is stalking somebody, you're like, you feel that tensity. I never felt that tensity at all. It was more like there's a lot of gore. Like, that's like, I thought the gore was actually pretty damn good for it being an independent film.
Yeah, so did I actually. My girl walked by a couple times while I was watching it, and because she didn't see the beginning of it, she didn't sit down to watch it. But when he was cutting up the stuff, she goes, "All right, I'm not looking at that." So so yeah, and that stuff was good. It looks like that a lot of their budget was on like, cow hearts and
Yeah.
shit like that. Um, now that I'm thinking about it, there is some good stuff in the movie. It's just it's what it reminded me of too, the creepy horror parts of it reminded me of the creepier parts in like Resident Evil 7. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
nice. Yeah, man.
You know what I'm saying? It's like
Like when we go into you go into that living room and there's nobody there, but you could see there was like fucking food on the table and shit, and
Mhm.
everything's really fucked up, but nobody's there, and you're like, oh shit, what the fuck happened here?
And
It's like
it's
that.
body parts.
Yeah.
You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? And one or two of the body part things weren't too bad. I think that maybe if they were shot a little bit differently, they actually would have been more effective. You know what I mean? Like, there was a part where like there was a torso hanging on like a meat hook or something like that in the thing, and then you look at it and it's like, okay, all right, and but then like it looks down and then there's like a severed arm and you're like, okay, and then the camera comes back up, look at the body. It's like, okay, then back to the severed arm, and then it walks back and then it looks at it again, and this all goes on for like 3 minutes. You know what I mean?
It
Like
was a
it's
long
and
shot for sure.
it was and I think a lot of that stuff, it's like it's sort of like they were going with sort of like, well, that was all of the raw footage of this supposed phone recording of this, you know what I mean, in the lore of the movie in a sense. But I know, and I hear you, but you know nobody wants to sit down and watch raw footage. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
I will say about the raw footage, one thing that I did like quite a bit was they're not the first person to do it, but when they had like the security cameras. I always like that shit. I'm a sucker for that shit, man. When
mhm.
they went to like a different view and they showed you like a security camera view, and it's all
Right.
like grainy or like green and
Hmm.
black or like gray and black, like that shit's awesome. I personally like that a lot.
Yeah, and so did I. Actually, I think that was any reason to take the camera kind of out of the person's hand was
Yeah,
interesting. You know what I mean? And I did like that when they did it at the beginning and at the end of the movie, where the girl runs behind the dumpster, and then the guy beats her with the 2x4,
and
and
you find out who did it at the end.
then they come back to it and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I did like that stuff,
You
because up until that point, it there was a reason for the movie. There's reasons for the movie to be shot the way that it is. In the very beginning, it's in that frame. It's that first part, and it's security footage, right? And then the next scene is him talking to the girl that's sitting by herself, and she's waiting for her boyfriend, and that's from like a phone, okay? And then it goes to the dumpster shot, but then it stays with the camera following somebody. I don't know. It's the novelty of it kind of fell apart. And here's why I think the movie. I think the biggest drawback of the movie was this. Forget the audio and stuff like that. There's a real structure problem with the movie, and it comes in from a movie making standpoint, there has to be a protagonist and an antagonist. An antagonist is obviously the person that antagonizes the main character. The problem is, my question to you is, who is the main character of this movie?
That's a great.
I have
when
an
you look
answer
at the
for
credits too,
it.
it's in a position in the credits where I wouldn't expect it, but I mean it kind of made sense.
Right.
Like if you look at the credits, I forget the actress's name, but the character was, I wrote it down somewhere on here.
Katie.
Katie.
Right.
She was the first one credited, which means she should be the main actress of the film, right?
But see, here's the thing, though. The protagonist. The point of a protagonist is that there's an arc to the character. Protagonist always begins one way. Something happens that changes their worldview or their opinion on something, and turns them into the person at the end of the movie that they end up being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a protagonist journey. The problem is that the person that we think is going to be the protagonist dies halfway through the movie, and then there is no more main character. And that's kind of why after a while it just becomes watching what happens as opposed to being invested with what happens, which is kind of why you were talking about how when Michael Myers pops out, you feel fear. It's because you're following Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis is the protagonist of the movie. Okay. Remember the movie Cloverfield? Now we're talking about other movies.
I don't think I've seen Cloverfield, so I'm not going to be able to
definitely did,
this.
because Neil loved it, and we watched it all the time whenever we would play poker. Cloverfield is the movie.
I might have been inebriated.
Yeah, really. Cloverfield's the movie with the big monster that attacks New York.
Vaguely remember this.
And then the head of the Statue of Liberty comes flying down the street, and then wow, okay. Well, that was my good example. But here's my point. In that movie, and it's a found footage movie. In fact, it's exactly what this movie thinks it's meant to be, which is footage in a camera in sequence, right? So in the very beginning of the movie, this guy is having a relationship with this girl, and they broke up. And then when he's going away to Japan, they throw this guy a party. And then during the party, a monster comes and attacks New York. So then the guy holding the camera is following these people to go throughout New York to go and do something. The main character, the guy, has this thing where he is one way. Something changes his trajectory. And then by the end of the movie, he's somebody else. That's what a protagonist is. And I think what fell apart in this movie, and it's why you don't feel scared or any dread really, is because the person that you're supposed to, in a sense, follow in the movie, the girl whose 35th birthday it is,
dies halfway.
She dies, and then nobody kind of picks up the mantle of this is the main character. So then at that point, all that you're doing is just watching footage of, organs being cut up and people eating, and admittedly colorful characters really.
I think the actors were great. I think most of it comes down to like just the writing and the structure of the script, really.
Yeah. I think that it wasn't. I think that I don't think that the movie needed to be shot the way that it was for story elements, just practical elements of, we have to do this really fast. We need a camera. Well, instead of buying a camera, we'll use a phone, and then we'll toss that into the reason. You know what I mean? I think, shooting the movie on a camera, I think would have been a better idea, if for no other reason than probably would have sounded better, and it certainly would have looked better, because everything was so dark.
It was like, they could have still made it feel like it was shot from a camera.
Sure.
But like I said, I can get over video stuff really quick. It was the audio that bothered me the most. But
yeah, the audio had a lot of problems. And it was just difficult to follow at one point, because I didn't know. Oh, all
definitely.
Right. So here was my other issue too. So, and it's a story issue. So again, the guy at the end, who beats up the girl, and then
he was the other main character.
Yeah, the other main character, right? Because she shows up early.
The one who turned out to be a main character,
right?
That's what I would describe him as.
He correct me if I'm wrong, but he was one of the 4 people that go to the restaurant,
Yeah,
right?
he was. He was.
Right.
He
And then
was he was the blonde girl's boyfriend,
blonde girl's
and
boyfriend,
he
and then
got into
that's
a
what
fight with Rio.
Ryu.
I'm gonna
So,
say
but
Ryu forever. Just it's the
I
video
know,
game
I know,
itself for
I
me.
know. But here's what always confused me. Let's say you're that character, okay? And I guess you don't want people to know that you were involved in this until the very end, right? Because that's what happened, right?
Yeah,
So his head is on the
on the table.
table, okay? In the reality of the movie, that character is trying to prevent everyone from knowing who that he's, one, not dead, and two, that he's in cahoots with the Japanese guys.
Right.
So he sticks his head through a table,
Mm-hmm.
puts someone else's dead dick in his mouth,
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
and waits for the moment to go, aha! And you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was there for
It's
quite a
not like
while.
he didn't
That
just
was a long
pull a
scene.
mask off Scooby doing it. You know what I mean? He's like, all right, just so no one else knows, put the dick in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
That
I didn't
kind
think
of
about
that
that,
kind of
but
did it for me.
that
You
is
know,
weird. That went over my head. Like I didn't think about that. It's like, oh well, at the end it was a lot of twists. It was like, oh, there was a twist. Oh, okay, there was another twist. There was
sure.
like 2 or 3 twists like right at the end, and I was like, all right, all right. But
I did like the little twist where he was the guy that would bring girls. You know what I mean?
I did like that too.
You
That was
know what I
good
mean? I actually really liked that too.
because he was
Uh,
more charismatic than Rio. Rio was like a creeper from the beginning. Like he
yes,
was
he
like,
was.
what the like? How do you even have this dude as your boyfriend? Like, which I liked a lot. I thought he was one of the better actors in the film, just because I thought he played such a good job being a fucking creeper, man. Like he
Right.
was freaking me out in the beginning of the movie.
um, walking in, cameras on shower and shit. Um,
He was just being a creeper, man.
he
Like
was, he was, he was
he
being
played the
creepy.
part very well, in my opinion.
Um, but here's another question. The cameraman. I should say.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a whole nother story. So there was a cameraman that he brought on that you never get to see, right? We never see that person.
we see him very briefly in footage when she's running, when the girl that penis mouth guy, and I don't know his guy's. Oh wait a
Brian.
minute, I think I might
And
know Brian.
the
Brian,
character
it
was
is Brian.
Brian.
Okay, yeah, Brian. The girl that Brian brought there, she runs out. She runs away from the table, and
Right.
for a second you see like security footage, and then they all run after her,
I don't remember
and
that.
you
I don't
see
remember
him
seeing his
running
face.
around with the phone,
Hmm.
Um, but you don't know who he is. Like, you don't know anything about him. You don't know who he is.
He
You
really
know,
was not a character. He was
he
really just
really wasn't a character. He was just an excuse for the camera to move around. But
and probably for you to see Rio because they wanted to
yeah,
show you him
right,
dying
exactly.
eventually.
And I get that. But again, like there was kind of no explanation as to why he was there, other than that he was someone that wanted money, and he was, I'm willing to do anything, man. And I remember that, but like there was no, like, I don't know, there was no development of that character at all. You know what I mean? Like,
There
what
wasn't.
was it? You know, guy
And
had no
I
qualms
did
holding a
like
camera.
the character Jin. He was only there for money. Like they even offered him like to eat, to
Oh
eat the
yeah,
hibachi at some point, and he was like,
uh-huh.
"No."
I
He's
don't.
like,
Yeah,
"I
yeah.
just want
I
the
don't eat
fucking
that shit.
money,"
Right. Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
can respect. Like he was probably one of the most realistic characters, looking at it, from a
Yeah.
lens
He
of
was really
like
good. He was
being an
probably my
American. Like,
favorite.
oh, he would do anything for money, but he won't eat people.
Right. Um. Let me see here. All right. 3 notes that I had. 3 other little notes. One, when they tie up Ben. No,
Who's
Brian.
Brian?
Brian. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He was the
When
first
they're
person
going
to be
through.
tied up.
Right. Yeah. But obviously he wasn't killed. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Did you see what they tortured him with by any chance?
Yeah, that was bad. I'm sorry, that was not good. It was a tree trimmer that I have. I have a tree trimmer like that, and if you've ever used one, you know that if it's more than like a finger length like bone, it just gets stuck and stops and doesn't work at all. That
I
thing doesn't
don't
hurt
I
anybody.
don't know that, but it was, yeah, that was a hedge trimmer.
It was,
You know
yeah.
what I'm
That's
saying? You
that's
know
the
what
proper
I mean?
term.
Or whatever it is. It's a tree trimmer. It's a hedge
It
trimmer.
can't cut a stick more than
It
a
ain't
half an inch thick.
it ain't gonna kill you.
No,
Okay, it looks cool,
it
but
does look cool.
it ain't gonna kill you. Right, and that's my guess is that they probably looked at the budget and said, well, we don't have a budget for a chainsaw. What do you got? Like, I got a hedge trimmer. So
Right.
bring the hedge trimmer to set. Um, Evil Mama San, I liked.
Who?
The evil Mama San, the woman, the Asian woman that was at the hibachi place. Remember her? She
Like
didn't
the
do much.
owner that didn't say anything? The
Yeah,
one
the
that was always
woman.
with Jin?
Yeah, the woman. She
Okay,
was
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, I call her Evil Mama San because I don't know what it is, but I liked, but
She
I
had no
liked,
name.
I liked everything about. I liked the look. I liked everything. I was just sitting there waiting because it sort of seemed like that she was kind of calling the shots. You know what I mean?
It did.
Um,
It seemed like
you
that,
know
but
what I
she
mean?
never said a fucking word as far as I can remember throughout the entire thing.
Right, right. I think that if I was sort of kind of like waiting for her to say something because whatever she was saying was going to happen. You know what I mean? Like cut his dick off, and then the dick comes up, you know.
For sure. And the other part that was interesting was at the end they had the cameraman at the end was Jin's daughter, who ended up dating Brian, who was essentially the one that was capturing all these people,
Right.
which was kind of like weird. It was like you're throwing in
Well,
another
the
character at the
daughter
end.
was. Yeah, the daughter was.
Jin's daughter was the
Right.
cameraman at the
At
end
the
of the
end.
film,
Right, right, right.
and she was dating Brian, who was the one that was getting all the people to go to the restaurant so
Oh,
they could
right,
capture
right,
him.
right, right. Yes, yeah. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. So anyway,
Oh man.
the pie. The pie came up, and that was I did like the twists in the movie. I did like the twists a lot in the movie. You know
The
what I
twists
mean?
were some of the better parts of the writing, honestly.
Yeah, because everything up until we got to the restaurant, I really didn't care about.
I did in
Going,
the beginning. Like I thought Rio. God damn it! Is it Rio?
it's Rio.
He
His
was such a
name
fucking
is
creeper,
Rio.
man. I really felt like uneasy about him in the beginning of the movie.
Hmm.
So I thought that was like a really good job in the beginning, and then eventually, like, it was just like I think what happened was like once they turned the camera and they showed him, I was like, I'm not really scared. Like, I think keeping his picture, like him out of the frame, was important for me because like I don't know who the fucking person is, you know. They kind of did that with Jin though too, because when Jin was like, "Oh, can you say sushi?" and he was taking the picture, they kind of made you feel like, "Oh, you don't know who's actually fucking around." Eventually, like everybody was pretty much fucking around and like
Right.
killing everybody and shit.
Um, but again, the movie falls apart in a couple of places, mainly in the story of it, because um, I like they're literally recording the crimes, and their answer is, well, we'll blur faces. It's like, yeah, but people know what people look like. You know what I mean? Like, and I understand it's like, you have to suspend your belief for that. But there's something about found footage movies that immediately cause you to judge everything about reality in them because they are reality. You know
I
what
get
I'm saying?
that.
It's sort of like if you watch like the Blair Witch Project. Okay, the Blair Witch Project. You know what I mean? It's like they it was done on the cheap, but everything was done like you know to be as sensible and realistic as possible.
That
Do
movie
you know what I'm
was
saying?
scary as shit until the end. It was, it was like once you actually were bringing in the monster, it wasn't even scary anymore.
Well, there was no monster in Blair Witch.
For sure.
I
But
mean,
it,
in the movie, I like
yeah,
the
but
ending of that movie. The guy's standing there; it's creepy as fuck, and then the camera drops, and then credits.
That
I
was
also thought
that
it
was
was
good, but
real.
like the paranoia you felt throughout that movie because
Hmm.
it seemed so realistic until you got to
Right.
me until you got to the point where there was something like out of this world that felt so realistic. Like I was terrified of that movie until the end. I get why I totally understand that, but the end of that movie actually made it worse for me because it was like,
Right.
all right,
Right.
you know,
Right. It's sort of like the things that you're trying to justify with realism aren't justifiable because it's otherworldly in a sense. You know what I
right?
mean?
Like
The noises, well, what could, well, of course it's not an evil witch, and so what are those noises? You know what I
exactly.
mean? And that's kind of what bugged me about this movie was because when it's nothing passed the smell test kind of once we got going. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, so if people go missing, like people looking for them, I don't know. I don't know. Found footage is so tough because it either comes off really lazy or everything about it is planned out really well. You know what I mean? And the premise
I
of
think
it.
the actors were picked well. I think that the gore was very good for an independent film. Like the gore,
Hmm.
they obviously
The gore
spent a
was
lot of the
probably the
budget
best
on
part of
that.
it.
And if you're not looking for gore, um, and you're looking for decent actors, but a, a follied writing,
Sure.
you'll probably get some enjoyment out of the film. But for me, the writing matters probably most. So I didn't really feel a lot of stuff other than like, oh, the actors are good, the gore is
Yeah.
good, but it
In a
wasn't for
small in a
me per se.
small movie in a small movie like this, and it's a micro movie. It's a micro budgeted movie, they call it. Um, Story and premise and uh, execution are really like the three biggest things that you have to get right, because the actors you just have to hope that the actors that you have can pull it off. And some of them did, I guess some of them didn't. But the premise wasn't bad. But I just think that the execution of so much of it was done so quickly that you don't have to cut corners too much nowadays. You know what I mean? You can get cheap cameras, you can get cheap microphones, you can edit things together much easier. Do you know what I
For
mean?
sure.
You can make these iPhones, they shoot in 4K. So that means that you can color correct easier than you've ever been able to. Um, and audio is not tough to get good.
I know
Do
that
you
for a
know
fact.
what I
Like
mean?
I record podcasts and stuff. Like I didn't spend a crazy amount of money on audio. I spent a couple $100, and the audio sounds better than. No offense, but it sounds better than anything in the film. It truly
Right.
does. And I only spent a few $100s on the audio. And I get that they're filming from a camera and it's not supposed to sound great, but
But
that's not
but
good for the viewer when you're listening to it and you can't hear shit.
sure. Right. It's no movie does that. You know what I
Right.
mean? No movie is purposely difficult to hear. That can't it's not a creative choice. It can't be. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just a result of just the way that it was done. And I get it. You know what I mean? I'm not harping on the movie because I want to, and I'm picking it apart. I think it's the biggest part of the movie is if you can't hear something, you don't want to watch it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you'll go back and you'll watch an old movie that looks like shit, but the sound quality's there, especially if it's a movie about talking. You know what I mean? If it's a 90-minute movie, 70 minutes of it is one person talking to another person. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I mean, most of the action was probably them like cutting up the meat and stuff. So, I mean, if you're there for the gore, I think you're going to get something out of it. I think you'll enjoy it, especially for it being a low budget film that was able to capture really good gore throughout most of the movie for the budget that they had. I think you'll
mhm.
get something out of the movie. I think you'll actually enjoy that part of it. I
I
thought the
would be
acting was
really
good, but if you're
interested.
going for a story,
Yeah, I would
it
be
might not
really
be for you.
interested to see, because some of it was so good in that I would like to see I would like to see them take another shot at it. You know
Like
what I
do
mean?
another gory movie, but like put more into the script or something like that.
Well, what I'm talking about is maybe looking at what they made and then saying, okay, so if this worked, this worked, this worked, and this didn't work, uh, redoing it. You know what I mean? Or at least doing something that's in the same vein, but doing it that much better. Do you know what I mean? You just got to put budget into it. You know what I mean? Because I mean, it seems like, I mean, I would hope that they didn't pay anything for the locations. They probably didn't pay the actors. You know what I mean? The people that are producing the movie are in the movie. You know what I mean? So just fill up actor space and stuff
Yeah,
like
I
that.
believe
A
Mario
lot of it,
wrote, directed, and like edited the film himself. I believe he did
sure.
all three of those things.
Right, which I mean is actually how everything's done nowadays. Do you know what I mean? For the same reason, and that's why when I went to film school, that was the point. The point was you learn every single job and editing. You know what I mean? And it's a collaborative thing. Do you know what I mean? So when you're a director in one thing, you be the DP of somebody else. I mean, he also shot the movie too. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? He was also the DP. So my guess is that when if he was the cameraman. You know what I mean? That he would have to be.
right,
It wouldn't make any sense for an actor to be the cameraman. He was the cameraman.
for sure.
Um, so that's what I mean. I think that almost like a do-over, because some of it was good, some of it really detracted, but I think putting budget into it, I think it's a good idea. You know what I mean? You have a bunch of psychos that are from Japan, and they uh, not only do they make money selling meals to crazy rich Americans, but they also, you know what I mean? But they also, make money by, creating snuff films and stuff like that. I don't think it needs to be shot found footage the way that it is. I think it could be shot like a normal movie, and would be just, if anything, it would be creepier. You know what
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
agree.
To kind of see that, and if anything, imagine the cameraman as a character, and maybe the cameraman feels a certain way about what he's shooting. You know
Yeah,
what I
maybe
mean?
he's really into it. He's like, this is the fucking greatest thing ever, and it's just one cameraman throughout like the whole thing. I know that would be harder to pull off with like different scenes and shit they had, but that goes back to the writing though. Like the writing is the biggest problem that I had with the movie,
Mhm.
and if it was just written in a different way, it just was like you said, it was kind of rushed. You know what I mean? Like it was like, all right, this is the script, this is what we're going with. But I mean, after you view that, you got to be like, okay, well, this didn't really work. Let's go back and fix it. And they probably didn't have the budget to go back and reshoot shit and redo things and change the script. But that's the difference between, in my opinion, something that's fucking great or something that's okay. You know what I mean?
Right, I hear
It's probably
you.
worth
Yeah.
checking out if you like the gore, especially if you're an independent filmmaker and you're like, how do I make gore correct? This is probably a good movie to watch. But if
Hmm.
you're looking for like a story where you're going to be freaked out, if the gore doesn't freak you out, this isn't going to freak you out. If it does freak you out, you'll probably like it a lot.
Well, the
But other than
story was
that,
definitely wrapped around the idea of Hibachi human.
I mean, that's the fucking title of the movie
and
for
and
sure. It was
and
going for a gore factor.
right, and I want, it's probably in whoever, yeah, I guess in the writer's head, he's probably sitting there going, I want a movie where a guy butchers someone and show, you know what I mean? And like that's because that's the best part in the movie for me. You know what I mean? You see the gore and stuff like that, and the guy
They show
chews the
you the
scenery, and
butcher
he has a
like, oh, I love my work, and he's cutting
right,
everybody
right,
up.
exactly. And then the whole movie's written around that, you know. All right.
Dane, what is your final thoughts on the movie?
My final thoughts on the movie are, um, I understand that it's tough making a movie. I think with a little bit more thought into things like the audio and having some of the conversations make sense, it actually could have been much better. But that being said, I liked the premise of it. I really did. I liked the idea of um, having kind of two stories, one where you have a hibachi place that serves human beings, and filming it to then create like a snuff film. You know what I mean? And the twists were really good. I did like the one character with his dick in his mouth for some reason, coming back, and then him being an integral part of all of it. You know what I mean? Um,
I agree. The premise was good. The twists were good. It's just the story overall just felt a little flat. That's all.
yes.
So if they rewrote some of it, it could have been a much better film. Um, I would say it's decent. You know, if you're looking for something gore wise, you'll enjoy it. Just don't go into it expecting like some, amazing story, where you're feeling afraid the entire time, because that's not the case.
Right. It's more so you're waiting for the moments where you're almost excited for the butcher, which I guess you
Yeah.
would be. You're excited for the guys getting ready to eat. You know what I mean? And stuff like that, where you have these guys that are just, they're so excited to chow down on some balls. And the one guy was disappointed that he didn't get a testicle that year, or
Yeah.
this year, whatever it was. You
He
know what
might
I
have
mean?
got some piss though. They drank blood and piss, so we'll
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I remember that.
You
So,
want the yellow or the red?
the
Give me the
yellow or the
yellow.
red. Um. But it did check a lot of boxes. There were tatters in the beginning, and gore, and twists, and uh, more twists. It was a very twisty movie, actually. Now that I think about it,
There
now
was
that I
like
think
3
about it,
twists at the end.
there really were. So anyway, that was the first episode of the movie podcast.
This is the inaugural
The
episode
inaugural episode.
of
Okay,
the
all right.
Enthusiast Movie Podcast. It was sponsored content, so thank you, Human Hibachi, for sponsoring us, for reviewing the movie. We
we we
appreciate it very much.
we picked your movie apart, but it's what we do.
You got to be honest. If you're willing to
Sure.
sponsor us, you got to know what you're getting into. We're going to be very open and honest about things. Doesn't mean we hate your movie or love your movie. It's just we're going to give our opinions the way they are, and hopefully you guys respect that. Hopefully if you're not comfortable, you take it with a grain of salt. That's totally fine. I understand that. But this is our true feelings about the movie. We weren't involved in the movie in any way, even though some of our associates may have been.
Mm.
This is Dane and mine's personal opinion about the film. So hopefully you guys respect that. Dane, I
Yes.
want to thank you for coming on.
No
Hopefully
problem.
we'll get you on here more often. I love your opinions about movies. That's why I wanted to have you on this podcast, and I look forward to doing more stuff with you in the future, man.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
All right, later.
Take care, guys. Follow, subscribe, share, all that bullshit that Dane hates right now. He's probably want to fucking kill himself. But do all those things, because I need it. We need it.
Yes, he does.
They're enthusiasts. Love you guys. Take care.